He ordered the salmon. I remember that detail with a clarity I cannot explain, the way you remember strange small things from the moments that change your life. The candle between us was one of those short, thick ones in a glass jar, and it made the whole table glow amber. And the restaurant was the kind of place where the menus have no prices on the woman's copy. I had always found that charming, that old-fashioned courtesy, the idea that a woman out to dinner should not have to think about cost. And he ordered the salmon and I ordered the pasta, and the waiter, a young man with dark hair and a white shirt and the particular quiet professionalism of someone who is very good at their job, said excellent choices and slipped away. It was our 8th anniversary. I had gotten my hair done that afternoon. Not in an elaborate way, just a blowout, the kind that makes your hair fall the way it never quite falls when you do it yourself, smooth and warm and intentional. I had worn the black dress, the one with the low back that I had bought 2 years earlier for a work event and had been saving for a real occasion ever since. I had put on the earrings Marcus gave me for our 5th anniversary. Small diamonds, simple, the kind of jewelry I actually wore. I had looked at myself in the mirror before leaving and thought, "You look good." A simple, uncomplicated thought. A happy one. I had driven to the restaurant thinking about what I wanted to order, whether we would get dessert, whether 8 years felt different from 7, and whether I would say that out loud over dinner because Marcus sometimes found that kind of reflection sentimental and sometimes loved it, and I could never quite predict which version of him would show up. I had not driven to the restaurant thinking, "Tonight is the last night of my marriage." Before we go any further, drop your city or state in the comments. I genuinely love knowing where you're watching from. Welcome to Soft Drama Stories. My name is Diane Calloway. I was 36 years old. I had been married to Marcus Calloway for 8 years, together for 10, and I had spent the better part of those 10 years being, by most measurable standards, happy. Not deliriously happy. Not the kind of happy that people perform on social media, the relentless documentation of a life that looks good from the outside. Just genuinely, quietly, sustainably happy. The kind that comes from having built something real with someone and knowing it is real and not needing to prove it. Or so I had thought. I grew up in a small suburb outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, the middle of 3 daughters in a family that was close in the way Southern families tend to be close. Physically proximate, emotionally present at all the major occasions, occasionally suffocating in the specific way of people who love you and have opinions about how you should be living. My mother, Sandra, was a woman of strong views and stronger instincts, the kind of woman who had an opinion about everything and delivered those opinions with the complete confidence of someone who has never been told that her opinion was not required. My father, Gene, was quieter, a retired engineer who expressed love through fixing things and showing up and never quite knowing what to say, but always being there to say nothing in a way that felt like something. My sisters, Renee, older by 3 years, and Patty, younger by 2, were both married with children and lived within 20 minutes of our parents, which was a life choice I had not made. Marcus and I had settled in Atlanta, where his career was rooted and where I had built my own, working as a marketing director for a mid-sized healthcare company. We had a house in a neighborhood with good trees. We had a dog named Walter. We had a life I had chosen deliberately and tended carefully and been genuinely proud of. What I did not have, I would come to understand in the months after the restaurant, was a complete picture of my own marriage. Marcus and I had not been fighting. That was the part I would repeat to people, over and over, like a detail that proved something. We had not been fighting. There had been no dramatic rupture, no discovered betrayal, no single moment I could point to and say, "There, that is where it went wrong." What there had been, I would slowly piece together in the weeks and months after, was a long, gradual, barely perceptible withdrawal. Marcus pulling back from conversations. Marcus becoming harder to reach inside of, even in the same room. Marcus growing a life inside himself that didn't quite include me, not out of cruelty, but out of, what? A decision he had been making slowly, privately, over a long time, without telling me he was making it. I had not seen it. Or I had seen it and translated it into something else. Stress, work pressure, the natural ebb of a long relationship, because the alternative translation was one I was not ready to make. The night of our 8th anniversary, in a restaurant with amber candlelight and a menu with no prices on my copy, Marcus made the translation for me. His name, I would later learn, was James. He appeared at our table approximately 45 seconds after Marcus set down his fork. The timing was not his fault. He had been on his way to check on us, to ask the standard question about how everything was tasting, to do the small professional dance of attentive service that good waiters do without making you feel watched. He arrived at a table where one person had just asked for a divorce, and the other person was staring at a candle trying to remember how to breathe. He read the room in approximately 1 second. I know this because of what he did not do. He did not ask how everything was tasting. He did not perform cheerfulness. He did not retreat immediately either. He did not do the thing that some people do when they sense emotion, which is back away fast and pretend they saw nothing, leaving you somehow more exposed for having been witnessed and then abandoned. What he did was set a small pitcher of water on the table, quietly, and say, in a voice low enough that only we could hear, "Take all the time you need. I'll be close by if you need anything." And then he left. I stared at the water pitcher. Marcus said something. I don't remember what, the beginning of an explanation, the shape of a reason, and I held up my hand, not aggressively, just not yet. And he stopped. And we sat in silence for a moment that felt very long and was probably not. And then I said, "How long have you known?" And he said, "A while." And I said, "How long is a while?" And he looked at the table and said, "About a year." A year. He had known for a year. He had carried this for a year, through last Christmas, through my birthday in April, through our trip to Portugal in the spring that I had thought was one of the best weeks of my life, and which he had apparently spent knowing what he knew. And he had said nothing, and I had been in our marriage alone without realizing I was alone in it. And now we were at a restaurant on our anniversary because he had not known how else to begin. I picked up my wine glass, took a long sip, set it down. "Portugal," I said. He closed his eyes briefly. "I know. You knew in Portugal." "Yes." I thought about Portugal. The small hotel with the blue tiles. The seafood we had eaten at a table outside, with the sound of the ocean underneath the conversation. The evening I had thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is the thing. I had thought that in Portugal. I had held that feeling up like evidence of something. It had been, apparently, evidence of something else entirely. James appeared again, quietly, without fanfare. He refilled Marcus's water glass without being asked, looked at me briefly, a professional look, but with something human underneath it, and said, "Can I bring you anything? We have a very good dessert wine by the glass if you'd like something different." It was such a specific, practical, kind suggestion. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you need a moment?" Just, "Here's a concrete thing I can offer you." "Yes," I said. "Please." He brought it within 2 minutes, set it in front of me with a small nod, and disappeared again. Marcus watched this happen, then looked at me. "You ordered dessert wine." He suggested it. "We haven't finished dinner." "Marcus," I said, "you just asked me for a divorce. I think we're past the dinner sequence." Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile. Nothing about the evening was a smile, but something that recognized the absurdity. The specific absurdity of two people sitting in a nice restaurant with food going cold between them, discussing the end of their life together, while the restaurant hummed on around them as if the world were entirely normal. "Fair," he said. We talked for a long time. Not the way people fight, not with raised voices or accusations, not with the theatrical escalation of a confrontation that has been building toward explosion. We talked the way people talk when a thing has already been decided and what remains is only the accounting, the careful, painful inventory of how you arrived at a conclusion that one of you reached long before the other. Marcus talked about feeling disconnected, about a sense, growing slowly over years, that we had built a life together that looked right from the outside, but felt to him increasingly like a structure he was maintaining rather than inhabiting. He talked about therapy. He had been going alone for 8 months, a fact I had not known, a fact that landed like its own small wound inside the larger one. He talked about not knowing how to say any of this, about convincing himself things would shift, about the Portugal trip being a genuine attempt to feel something different, and the grief of not feeling it. He was not cruel. He was not cold. He was a man dismantling something with as much care as he could manage, and the care itself was somehow one of the hardest parts. It would have been easier, in some ways, if he had been careless, if there had been something to be angry at. I asked questions. Not all of them good questions. Some of them the kind you ask when you already know the answer but need to hear it said, "Is there someone else?" There wasn't. "Did you ever love me?" He had genuinely, deeply for a long time. When did it change? He couldn't point to a moment. It had changed the way everything real changes, gradually, imperceptibly, and then all at once. I drank the dessert wine slowly. James refilled it once without being asked. I noticed this. At some point our plates were cleared. I don't remember when. I don't remember James doing it, but at some point the food was simply gone and neither of us had eaten much, and the table was bare except for the candle in our glasses and the small, terrible weight of what was being decided. What happens now? I said. I think I should stay somewhere else for a while. Give us both space to... Where? I called Derek last week. He said I could stay in his spare room. Last week. He had called Derek last week. He had arranged a place to go before this conversation. He had done the logistical work of leaving before he had told me he was leaving, which meant that this dinner, this anniversary dinner, this evening I had gotten my hair blown out for, had not been a conversation so much as a notification. I set down my wine glass. You already have a place to go, I said. I didn't want to have this conversation and then have nowhere... Marcus. He stopped. You planned this, I said. Not angrily. Just with the specific clarity of someone who has just understood the shape of the thing they are inside of. You planned all of it. The restaurant. Derek's. The timing. You've been planning this for how long? He didn't answer immediately, which was, again, its own answer. A few weeks, he finally said. A few weeks of normal mornings. Of coffee made and shared. Of evenings on the couch and small, ordinary exchanges about groceries and weekend plans and how was your day. A few weeks of a marriage that was, to me, still a marriage, while he was already, in every way that mattered, gone. I picked up my wine glass again, put it down without drinking, and James appeared. He did not come to check on our order. He did not come to offer dessert. He came with the check, which he set on the edge of the table, not in front of either of us specifically, just at the edge, neutral, available. And then he crouched down slightly so he was at eye level with me, which was a thing I would think about for weeks afterward. The deliberateness of that small physical adjustment, the choice to meet me where I was rather than stand above me. And he said quietly, I'm going to tell you something, and I hope it's okay that I do. You don't have to respond. I looked at him. I've been doing this job for 11 years, he said. I've seen a lot of difficult conversations at tables, and I want you to know that the way you've handled yourself tonight, the dignity you've had, is something. It's really something. I don't know your situation, and it's none of my business. But I saw you when you came in, and I want you to know that whoever you are when you walk out of here, that person is going to be okay. He stood back up, straightened his jacket. The dessert wine is on me tonight, he said. Take as long as you need. And he walked away. I stared at the table. Marcus was very still across from me. I did not cry. I had been holding that back for the entire dinner with the specific muscular effort of someone who has decided that this particular restaurant, this particular night, is not where the crying happens. But it was close. It was closer than it had been at any point in the evening. Closer than I think we should end the marriage. Closer than about a year. Closer than I called Derek last week. A stranger's kindness nearly undid me when my husband's honesty had not. I thought, what an extraordinarily decent person. I thought, I am going to remember this for the rest of my life. I thought, I need to call my mother. I did not call my mother from the restaurant. I drove home. Marcus took an Uber to Derek's, which was a sentence I would have found incomprehensible 24 hours earlier, and I walked into a house that was completely normal and completely altered simultaneously, the way places feel after something has happened in them. Walter came to meet me at the door, tail going, delighted by my existence in the way that only dogs are, and I sat down on the floor in the entryway in my black dress with the low back and let him climb into my lap, and I held him for a long time. Then I called my mother. It was 10:30 at night. She answered on the second ring. She always answered, my mother. This was one of her genuine qualities. And I said, Marcus asked me for a divorce tonight. The silence on her end lasted about 3 seconds. Then, at dinner? Yes. On your anniversary? Yes, Mom. Another silence. Then, and I want to be precise about this because precision matters. Well, I always thought there was something a little off about him. I closed my eyes. This was not what I needed. I knew, even in the raw first hour of the worst night of my life, that this was not what I needed. I needed someone to say, I'm so sorry. I'm coming over. You are loved. I needed presence, warmth, the simple human acknowledgement that something terrible had just happened to me, and I was allowed to be devastated by it. What I got instead was my mother's retroactive opinion of my husband, delivered with the confidence of a woman who had never once expressed this opinion in 8 years of marriage. You always thought there was something off about him, I repeated. He was always a little, I don't know, contained. Your father said the same thing. Mom, I'm just saying with hindsight, I don't need hindsight right now. I just need someone to. I stopped. Took a breath. I just found out my marriage is over. On my anniversary. In a restaurant. A pause. Then softer. I know, honey. I know. Do you want me to come over? Yes. That was what I wanted. That was exactly what I wanted, and she had gotten there, but the path she had taken to get there had left marks. The detour through, I always thought in your father said had taken up space that should have been occupied entirely by, I'm sorry, I love you, I'm coming. It's late, I said. You don't have to. I'll come tomorrow, she said. First thing. Okay. And Diane, you're better off. I really believe that. I stared at the ceiling of my entryway. Walter had fallen asleep across my legs. Mom, it's been 45 minutes. Can I be not okay for a little while first? She meant well. I knew she meant well. My mother has always meant well, in the way of people who lead with their opinions and follow with their hearts, who arrive at the right place by a route that leaves you slightly bruised. She loves me. I have never doubted it. But in that moment, on the floor with my dog in the black dress with the low back, I would have traded every well-meaning thing my mother had ever said for 11 more seconds of what James the waiter had given me. My mother arrived at 8:30 the next morning with a casserole, which was so specifically her that I almost laughed. A casserole. For a divorce. As if the primary problem created by the dissolution of a marriage was a potential caloric deficit. I made coffee. She sat at my kitchen table and looked around the house with the expression of a woman taking inventory, which I recognized and did not have the energy to address. Have you called Renee? She asked. Not yet. She's going to want to know. I know, Mom. It's been less than 12 hours. I'm just saying she'll be hurt if she hears it from someone else. Who else would she hear it from, you? A pause. Slightly too long. Mom. I may have texted her last night, just to give her a heads up, so she wouldn't be blindsided. I put down my coffee cup. My mother had texted my sister. I did the math, within approximately 2 hours of my phone call. She had taken the worst night of my life and turned it into a group notification. You texted Renee. And Patty. Just so they knew. So they could be there for you. I hadn't told anyone yet. I know, but family should know these things. It's my marriage, Mom. It's my news. I should get to decide when and how. I was trying to help. And there it was. The sentence that ends so many arguments in families where love is genuine and boundaries are theoretical. I was trying to help. Said with complete sincerity. Said by someone who genuinely believed it. Said in a way that made it nearly impossible to be angry without seeming ungrateful, which was, I had come to understand, not a manipulation exactly, but a pattern. A deeply ingrained, entirely unconscious pattern. Renee called at 9. Patty called at 9:15. Both calls followed approximately the same structure. An opening of sympathy, a pivot to opinion about Marcus, a transition into advice about what I should do next. Delivered with the confidence of women who had not been in the room, had not had the conversation, had not sat across from the man in question and heard what he actually said and seen his face when he said it. Renee thought I should get a lawyer immediately, today, before Marcus had a chance to hide assets, a phrase that assumed a financial ruthlessness in Marcus that was not consistent with the man I had been married to, but which Renee delivered with complete conviction. Patty thought I should come stay with her for a while, which was kind in intention and impractical in reality. I had a job, a dog, a life that did not pause because my marriage had ended. And when I said this, Patty said, well, I just think you shouldn't be alone, in a tone that suggested being alone was a condition requiring intervention rather than a preference I was entitled to have. My father called at noon, said, I'm real sorry, Di, which was 8 words and somehow more useful than everything else combined. By 2 in the afternoon, I had spoken to 11 members of my family, not because I had called them, because my mother had texted Renee and Patty, and Renee had called 2 aunts, and Patty had told her mother-in-law, who was also tangentially connected to our extended family. And the information had traveled the way information travels in close families, fast, in all directions, gathering interpretation as it went. By the time my Aunt Carol called to say she had always found Marcus a bit cold, frankly, I had stopped answering the phone. I sat on my couch with Walter and thought about James. The way you've handled yourself tonight, the dignity you've had, is something. I thought about the specific quality of being seen by someone with no stake in the outcome, no history, no opinion about Marcus formed over 8 years of holiday dinners and family vacations. No need to make the situation mean something about their own judgment or their own life. Just a person, doing their job, choosing to be decent, offering the exact right thing at the exact right moment because they were paying attention. My family loved me and had spent the day making me feel like the subject of a meeting I hadn't been invited to. A stranger had spent 4 hours making me feel like a person worth being gentle with. I found this contrast instructive. Marcus moved his things out on a Saturday, 3 weeks after the restaurant. I had agreed to be somewhere else while it happened. It seemed kinder to both of us to not be present for the physical dismantling. I took Walter to the park, a long, meandering walk through a part of the city I didn't usually go to, and I let him sniff everything he wanted to sniff, and I did not look at my phone, and I did not think about what was happening at the house, or tried not to. When I came home, the closet on his side was empty, and the bookshelf had gaps where his books had been, and the bathroom had a particular openness on the counter that I stood and looked at for a long time. There was a note on the kitchen table, handwritten, which I hadn't expected, that said, "I'm sorry for how I did this. You deserved better than a restaurant. You deserve the conversation much sooner. I hope you know that none of this is about your worth. M." I read it 3 times, folded it, put it in a drawer. I called Tamara, my closest friend, who had been in New York for work when everything happened, and who had been texting me daily since, and who, when I told her the full story, the restaurant, James my mother's casserole, Renee's asset hiding theory, Patty's insistence that I shouldn't be alone, listened to the whole thing without interrupting and then said, "The waiter sounds like a genuinely good human being." "He was," I said. "He really was. And your family sounds like your family." "Yes." "Are you okay?" I thought about this honestly. I was in my house with the gaps on the bookshelf and the empty counter in the bathroom and a dog asleep on my feet. And outside, it was an ordinary Saturday afternoon, and somewhere Marcus was unpacking boxes in Derek's spare room, and the marriage was over. "Not yet," I said. "But I think I will be." I started therapy the following week. Not because I was falling apart. I was holding together, more or less, in the functional way of people who have jobs and responsibilities and a dog who needs walking. But because I had learned something in the past few weeks about the difference between holding together and actually being okay, and I was interested in the latter. My therapist, Dr. Anita Webb, had an office full of plants in a direct manner that I immediately appreciated. In our first session, she asked me to describe the night of the restaurant, and I did. And when I got to James, she leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about that moment," she said. He said the right thing. Exactly the right thing. Nobody else did, that whole night. Not Marcus, not my mother, not any of them. A stranger got it right. Why do you think that is? I had been thinking about this already. I had been turning it over since the night it happened. Because he had no investment in the outcome, I said slowly. He didn't need me to be okay so that he could feel okay. He didn't need the situation to mean something. He just saw me, just me, and responded to what he actually saw. Dr. Webb nodded. And what did the people who love you do instead? They responded to what they needed it to mean. She let that sit for a moment. That's a very clear-eyed thing to understand, she said. I've had 3 weeks, I said, and a lot of time alone with a dog. It took 2 months. 2 months of Sunday dinners at my parents' house where my mother was kind and present, and also, consistently, doing the thing where she moved through my pain toward her own feelings about my pain, her own narrative about Marcus, her own version of events that cast her as someone who had always known and was therefore vindicated. 2 months of biting my tongue. Of saying yes, Mom and I know, Mom and you're probably right when what I was thinking was something considerably more direct. The conversation happened on a Sunday in November, after dinner, when everyone else had gone home and I was helping my mother with the dishes, and she said, for what I estimated was the 14th time, "I just always felt like he never fully appreciated you." I put down the dish I was drying. "Mom," I said, "I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it." She turned from the sink. "Read something in my face." Turned off the water. "Okay," she said. "The night it happened, when I called you from the floor of my entryway, I needed you to say one thing. Just one. 'I'm sorry, I love you, I'm coming.' That was all. And instead, the first thing you said was that you'd always thought there was something off about him." She opened her mouth. "I'm not finished," I said, gently but clearly. "You texted Renee and Patty before I'd told anyone. You made my news into a family announcement before I had processed it for even 2 hours. And for 2 months, every time I've been here, the conversation has been about Marcus and what he did wrong and whether you saw it coming. And what I have needed this whole time, is for someone to ask about me. Not about him. About me. How I am. What I'm feeling. What I need." My mother was very still. I know you love me, I said. I know everything you did came from love. But love that centers itself, love that makes your child's pain about your own feelings, that's a hard thing to receive. The kitchen was quiet. My mother looked at the dish towel in her hands, then at me. I didn't realize, she said. I thought I was being supportive. I know you did. I was scared, she said more quietly. When you called, I was scared for you, and I didn't know what to do with scared, so She shook her head. I talked. I talk when I'm scared. I always have. I know, I said. I texted the girls because I didn't want to be the only one holding it. It was too big to hold alone. Something loosened in me. Not completely. The 2 months were still there. The casserole, Renee's asset theory, the 14 repetitions of I always knew. But something. That I understand, I said. But it wasn't yours to share. No, she said. It wasn't. We stood in the kitchen for a moment. The quiet between us was uncomfortable and also honest, which felt like progress. What do you need from me? She asked. Really? Tell me. Ask me how I'm doing and mean it. Don't pivot to Marcus. Don't tell me what you saw coming. Just ask about me. Okay, she said. And maybe lead with I love you next time. Before the opinions. Something crossed her face. Something rueful and a little tender and a little like a woman recognizing herself in a description she doesn't entirely like. That's fair, she said. She opened her arms. I stepped into the hug, a real one, the kind my mother gives when she stops performing and just feels, which she is capable of and which I had been waiting for since October. I love you, she said into my hair. I should have said that first. Yes, I said. You should have. I went back in December. Not because I had planned to. I was driving past it on an errand and found myself turning into the parking lot with the vague, instinctive intention of someone who has unfinished business they haven't fully named. I sat in the car for a moment. It was a Thursday evening. The restaurant was busy, amber lit, exactly as I remembered it. I went in. Asked the host if James was working. She looked at me with the mild wariness of someone being asked about a staff member by a stranger. Can I ask what it's regarding? I was a customer here in October. He was kind to me during a difficult evening. I wanted to thank him. Her expression shifted. She went to check. Came back and led me to a quiet corner near the host stand, where James appeared a few minutes later, still in the white shirt, slightly puzzled. He did not remember me immediately. I had not expected him to. I was one table among many. One difficult evening among what I imagined were many difficult evenings he had witnessed over 11 years of this work. I told him the date. The table. The dessert wine. Recognition crossed his face. Slow, then certain. I remember, he said. I wanted to say thank you. What you said to me that night, the things you said, I've thought about them every week since. You got it exactly right, and the people who were supposed to get it right didn't, and I wanted you to know that it mattered. That you mattered that night. He was quiet for a moment. Then, how are you doing? Better, I said. Really, genuinely better. Good, he said. Simply. Like it was the most natural thing. I'm glad. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing deep, nothing long. Just two people on either side of an encounter that had meant more to one of them than the other had known. Before I left, he said, for what it's worth, I meant what I said. You had real dignity that night. A lot of people don't. I was terrified, I said. I know, he said. That's what made it impressive. I drove home in the December dark, feeling something I had been searching for since October. Not closure exactly, because closure is a word that implies an ending, and I was learning that what I was living was not an ending but a transition, long and uncomfortable and occasionally surprising in its gifts. But something adjacent to closure. Something that felt like, I have acknowledged what happened and I am moving through it. Something that felt like, I am going to be okay. It has been just over a year since the restaurant. The divorce was finalized in the spring. Quietly, without drama, the paperwork moving through the system with the unhurried bureaucratic thoroughness of a process that does not know or care what it costs the people inside it. I signed the final documents on a Tuesday afternoon in my lawyer's office and drove home, and took Walter to the park and sat on a bench in the afternoon light and let myself feel the full weight of it, which was heavy and also, underneath the heavy, a kind of lightness I had not expected. I live alone now, which I was afraid of and which has turned out to suit me better than I knew. My apartment, I sold the house in the summer, bought something smaller and entirely mine, is on the 3rd floor with windows that face east. I wake up to good light. I have filled the space with things I chose without consulting anyone, which sounds small and is not small at all. Marcus and I have been in contact, occasionally the careful civil contact of two people who shared a life and are now in the process of becoming strangers who were once very close. He seems okay. I bear him no ill will. I understand, more now than I did on the night of the restaurant, how two good people can build something real together and still arrive, eventually, at separate destinations. It doesn't require a villain. It only requires time and honesty and the courage to say the thing when it is true, even when the saying of it costs something. I wish he had told me sooner. I have made my peace with the fact that he didn't. My mother and I are better. Not perfectly better. She still has opinions, will always have opinions. Opinions are as fundamental to her as breathing. But we are better. She asks how I'm doing now with more genuine curiosity and less agenda. She calls on Tuesdays just to talk, which she had never done before, and the calls are different from the ones we used to have. More honest, more mutual. More like two people who love each other and are figuring out what that means than like a mother managing a daughter. I think the conversation in the kitchen in November was the best thing I did all year. Not because it fixed everything. Because it was true. Renee apologized eventually for the asset-hiding comment. Patty still thinks I should have come to stay with her, but has accepted that I didn't. My Aunt Carol has not mentioned Marcus being cold since July, which I count as progress. My father calls sometimes. Says very little. Means a lot. Walter is 11 now and moving a little slower, and I am more grateful for him than I can properly express. Which is the thing about dogs. They are always exactly what you need, and never what you have to perform for. I go to therapy every 2 weeks. I have learned things in that small plant-filled office that I did not know about myself. Some of them flattering, and some of them less so, and all of them useful. I have learned that I spent the years of my marriage quieter than I needed to be about my own unhappiness. That I was not the only one withdrawing, that the distance Marcus felt was not entirely a thing that happened to me, but a thing we built together by not saying what we needed to say, and that understanding this is not the same as blaming myself and learning the difference between those two things has been one of the more valuable things I have done. I have not been back to the restaurant since December. I think about James occasionally, not in the way you think about someone you know, but in the way you think about a person who appeared at the exact right moment and said the exact right thing and reminded you, when you most needed reminding, that you were worth being decent to. If he ever reads this, though he won't, there is no reason he would, I want him to know, the dessert wine was the perfect suggestion. And what he said to me was the truest thing anyone said to me that entire year. The way you've handled yourself, the dignity you've had, is something. I am still working on believing that fully. But I am working on it. And that, I have decided, is enough. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been in a moment where a stranger got it right and the people who loved you got it wrong, drop a comment below. You are not alone in that. Like if this hit you somewhere real. Subscribe for more soft drama stories. Take care of yourselves out there.